Welcome. Guys, is this real? Did it really happen? I'm still soaking it in. Yeah, the win over Mizzou. I'm still not over it. Welcome in to From Beyond the Pain. I'm Cody. You can follow me on Twitter at Cody_CHGO. I'm drinking this beer to cheers to yet again the win over Mizzou. Because, man, it's still sweet. It's still sweet. It's still sweet, folks. I've had some time to process what actually happened last Friday. It was my favorite part of the holiday weekend. Not true, but it ranks up there, probably top 5 of the holiday weekend. But it was a great way to go into the holiday weekend. Man. So I'd love to know. We got a decent amount of people watching right now. Love to know your thoughts on how you're feeling about Illinois right now. I want to talk it all out, man. I'm ready. This podcast, this is, if we get to March and things either go really bad or go really good, this is going to be the podcast that I'm going to reference. This is the podcast where I probably talk myself into Illinois being a Final Four team. Even though I was just at the CHGO offices today telling my guy, Big Dave, that I'm going to wait until after the Purdue game on January 5th. And if Illinois competes or wins that game, then I will find a way to talk myself into Illinois being a Final Four team. But you know what? I'm going to talk to my MacBook Air camera for the next 30 to 45 minutes and probably find a way to talk myself into it anyway, because I know me. I've known me for 32 and a half years, and this is what I do, folks. I talk myself into shit when I shouldn't. But for right now, fuck it. Who cares? Because the vibes are good with Illinois basketball. I just watched that video that the Illinois basketball Twitter account posted tonight of like the entire team buying each other gifts. It looked like that, like a white elephant thing or whatever. Like, you know, they drew names out of a hat or something like that. And like, you watch that video and it's like the vibes with this team right now are immaculate. And man, it's like a complete reverse from last year. And there was one thing from Brad Underwood's post-game presser against Mizzou that made me feel that way. And I'm going to play it right now. Here we go. Do I hit this button? I do hit. It's either this one. Maybe it's this one. This is the one I want. Here we go.
They're playing to win, you know, and it's there's no other agendas. They all are mature enough to understand that winning helps all of them. There's no, you know, me. There's none of that. It's all about, you know, their approach. They have fun together. They're connected. They're like personalities. There's no knuckleheads. I mean, it is just everything you can think of that you would want to have in a connected team. Right now we have, and that's pretty cool.
So I hope you guys all heard that. I'm assuming you all heard that. For everyone here who is watching, that fired me up, man. And one, you might be able to take that, and maybe he's throwing, as in Brad Underwood, throwing some unnecessary shots at last year's team. Listen, we all know last year's team was a mess. They were very young. You know, it's not only just Matthew Mayer that seemed like perhaps was a problem with this team, but you know, Jaden Epps. It's not like he didn't have any issues with this program at the end of the year. You know, I don't know what's going on inside the doors behind the scenes in Illinois, right? But the vibes were not there last year, and that was probably my biggest frustration, because it felt like outside of last season, it felt like they were really building a culture, like a real winning culture. And I know they had a bunch of guys graduate the year before. You know, you lost Trent Frazier, you lost DeMonte Williams. Talk a little bit more about him here and a little bit related to a tweet and such. A little tease for you guys. You know, you had Alfonso Plummer, a graduate transfer, I believe. You were an older team the year before when you won a share of the Big Ten, right? And last year's team was very young and inexperienced, and it showed. And it feels like this team has a good mix of youth and veterans, with the veterans leading in Terrence Shannon Jr., Quincy Guerrier, Coleman Hawkins, and Marcus Damask. So again, that win against Mizzou was very telling of what I feel like we're going to see a lot of in conference play, because I just don't know how many teams in the Big Ten can keep up with Illinois. Illinois plays a style of game that I just don't feel like we see a lot of in the Big Ten over the course of my life, to be honest with you. I will take their guards against any other team's guards in the Big Ten. And that's even against Purdue. And Purdue is right now, I still think Purdue is better than Illinois. They just beat Arizona. They lost to Northwestern, which didn't surprise me too much. Northwestern's a veteran team, same team from last year that beat Purdue. There's just something that Northwestern has on Purdue. Maybe it's the matchups, whatever. But when you look at Purdue and you look at their guards, they're right up there, man. They're right up there. It's nothing against those guys. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, those guys are dogs, right? But I would take, as the biased Illini fan, I will take those guys over Purdue. I look forward to the matchup, and January 5th is coming. It's going to come quick, but they can't overlook some of these teams they got coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit too. Obviously, Fairleigh Dickinson coming up. Speaking of Purdue, Fairleigh Dickinson coming up on Friday. You could call it a trap game with Northwestern coming up next week, but you got basically a whole week off until then. So I feel like Illinois is going to come finish out the non-conference season with a bang. Continue to not only win games that you're supposed to win, but continue to find ways to get better. And that's what these non-conference, like mid-major games are supposed to be. That's how I've always looked at them. You're not going to get perfection out of all of them. I was very frustrated with some of their games against these schools earlier in the year because they were turning the ball over a ton and missing free throws. So it was all things that they could control. But since that game against Rutgers, this team has been very good in terms of limiting the turnovers and making their free throws. So the month of December has been very, very good for Illinois. I was actually reading an article from Illini Inquirer today from Jeremy Werner. He talks a lot about Terrence Shannon Jr. and other dudes on the team, but the title of this article is Pick Your Poison, Illini Offense Taking Off with Rise of Shannon's More Consistent Supporting Cast. And that's fair. I mean, Matthew Mayer was not a consistent scorer last year. Hell, even Terrence Shannon Jr. wasn't that consistent. He would have games where he would score all his points in one half and then go completely away in the second half. It was almost like he just disappeared. But he's been a much more consistent player this year, and I think his supporting cast, obviously, too, has been more consistent. Right. Right now, he currently leads Illinois in scoring, total assists with 28. Free throw attempts, 83 free throw attempts. Total steals and total blocks. And, he is obviously the main reason that they're number 11 in the AP poll this week. And I saw a lot of people on Illini Twitter kind of probably a little salty about the fact that Illinois wasn't in the top 10, especially when FAU, who they beat, was higher than them. And also Arizona, even though Illinois didn't play Arizona, but Arizona, lost to Purdue. They lost to FAU, and they still are ranked higher than Illinois. Honestly, I don't really care. The AP poll is the AP poll. It's, people vote on it. Do I think the people who vote on it are consistent? No. Do I think that they're trying to do their best? Yes. So that is what it is. I think Illinois will be in the top 10 at some point. If they win, they go 2-1 in the first three conference games, which is Northwestern, Purdue, and Michigan State, if they go 2-1 in those 3 games, they're going to be in the top 10. They'll definitely be in the top 10 if they beat Purdue in one of those 3 games. Sorry, I had to take a sip. So it again, you went from number 13 to number 11. Maybe the country or the AP poll, AP voters are down on Mizzou. I mean, Jeff Goodman literally tweeted Mizzou looks like an NIT team right now after that game. So it is what it is. I in general, I don't really care. But back to this article that Jeremy Werner wrote today. He said in it he credits Bartorvik. I think that's how you pronounce it. All right. During the month of November, Illinois went 5-1 and was number 72 in the country in overall efficiency and number 212 in offensive efficiency. Through 5 games during the month of December, Illinois, which is 4-1 in that span, they are the number 3 team in the country in overall efficiency and number 4 overall in offensive efficiency. So you could see the difference this team is playing, like the improvements that they have made in the month of December compared to November. And all I hope is I hope this team isn't peaking in December, guys. That's all I hope. But that's insane if you really think about it. You think about all the elite programs, the Blue Bloods, the teams that are higher than them in the AP poll, to be ranked number 3 in the country in overall efficiency and number 4 overall in offensive efficiency. You'll love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. So I just wanted to point that out. This is a pretty good article, just going in depth on all the players that have made a huge impact on this Illini basketball team through this point. So, when you think about like this article, it's titled "Pick Your Poison." When you think about picking the poison of who would you rather beat you for this Illinois team? We're going to get to a point where every team is just going to be so focused on Terrence Shannon Jr. that he's either going to continue to do what he does, which I see. He's like a midseason. He was picked as one of the midseason All-American finalists or something like that by 24/7 Sports and a few other outlets too. There's so many different outlets that put out these rankings and like awards and stuff like in season, which I've never really fully understood, but whatever. When you think about picking your poison with this Illini team right now, it's like, okay, TSJ is your number 1 option. Oh, he's gonna drive and you're gonna collapse that defense to not let him get that layup. Okay, you can kick it out to Quincy Guerrier or DeMarcus Damask in the corner. Both have shown to be very productive from not only behind the arc, but even in the paint as well. There's no if, ands, or buts. Quincy Guerrier coming off his career high 28 points, 5 of 8 from the 3-point line against Mizzou. He's really turned it on in the month of December. I was kind of questionable about him in November, and it's not that I was already out on him in November. It's more of like, it looks like he's still trying to figure out his role or something like that. It felt like, at least from my view, but it seems like he has learned what his role on this team is, and that's be efficient from the corner 3 pockets and defense and rebounding. And this team is one of the best rebounding teams in the country, I believe they rank in the top 3, if not number 1. You talk about Marcus Damask. He has shown that his game is evolved even from when he was at SIU. Like against Mizzou, he didn't shoot well from 3, but he's found ways to get to the free throw line. He's found ways to work his mid-range game into the game and make an impact in those games. He did not have a good game against Tennessee, but to see him bounce back against Colgate and Mizzou was good to see. And he didn't have the greatest game against Mizzou, but he made an impact on the game. And that's all you can ask for guys if their shot's not hitting. You can't expect guys to go out there and make every single shot. And, in his case, like he did against FAU, put up 30 some points, right? So I just like that he's found a way to make an impact on the game. The one thing I will complain about Marcus Domask is that he has turned the ball over in the backcourt multiple times these last couple games. He did it at Tennessee as well. So I don't know what Brad Underwood's thinking with that situation. And it goes back to this team doesn't have a true point guard. I feel like Ty Rodgers has been fine, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He's been great defensively, but he's been able to get the ball up the court. And the last handful of games, he hasn't really turned the ball over. And that's all I can ask. I think his defense is important. And he's kind of becoming that new glue guy in some aspects, in my opinion. I mentioned DeMonte Williams, and I kind of view Ty Rodgers as that too. Like his presence on the court, you can tell what he does to make the team better, even though he's not shooting it every time down the court, or it's not like he's stuffing the stat sheet a lot, right? But I feel like he is that new DeMonte Williams like glue guy. So I'm interested in your thoughts. You let me know on that, because I've been impressed for the most part in the role that he's in to start this year. And I was someone who was very pessimistic, not only about the entire team coming into this year, but him playing point guard, basically. So you got, like I said, I mentioned Quincy Guerrier, I mentioned Marcus Domask. I can't go without this. Can't continue to do this without mentioning Coleman Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins, going into the Rutgers game, he had not played well. He had an injury, missed a few games. And I felt like against Rutgers in the first half, he was not very good. Much better second half performance, finished with a plus minus. And I feel like he's been much better in this last 5-game stretch. He's showing why he is an NBA prospect, right? He can hit the three, and obviously he's 6'10" and bigger than most people on the court, so he can dribble drive, or he can take you into the post, and he can, play make from there, whether it's passing out, the kick out for an open three, or he can go up and score. His in this article that Jeremy Warner wrote, he mentioned his first 3 games before he was out, 4.7 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, and he was only shooting 31% from the field. His last 5 games after that rest, 11.6 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 38.9% from the field, and 9 for 28 from the 3-point line. And then just his last 3 games in general, 14.3 points per game, 6 rebounds, shooting 40% from the field, and 8 for 21 from 3. Against Mizzou, he showed that he can be really effective in that pick and pop game. And if he's not doing the step back 3, whenever he gets the ball at the top of the key and he tries to do that step back 3, it makes me want to pull my hair out. But when he gets an open 3 in rhythm, because a guard drives and kicks, that's fine. I'm open for it. And, the point is he's been playing a lot better in these important non-conference games than he was at the beginning of the year. Maybe, he just wasn't fully healthy. So pick your poison. Those 4 guys, right? And I think that on any given day, you can have a guy like Luke Goody get hot from 3, make 4 or 5 threes in a game. You telling me whenever this team goes and plays Indiana, his home state, he's not going to be hyped for that? You telling me that he couldn't possibly have a legacy game, as one might say? I still think there's a lot to love about what Luke Goody brings to this team, not only on the defensive side, but he has consistently been able to hit threes. He didn't shoot well against Tennessee, but it didn't affect his confidence. It's not like he didn't come out the next game and jack some shots up and they went in. Happened against Mizzou too. I think he's playing his role as well as he can. I'm waiting for a guy like Justin Harmon to maybe get a little bit more aggressive on the offensive end. I'm looking for Dane Danger. Like, I know it wasn't a good matchup for him in Mizzou, but in Big Ten play, they're gonna need him. You know how Big Ten play gets. It's grinded out. It's the refs are bad and the fouls are not consistent. Like, I just know that at some point they are going to need Dane Danger to make an impact on the interior for this Illini team. And whether that's just being used for fouls and going out there to rebound, whatever. But he's played very little minutes these last handful of games. And all I'm saying is that I'm not out. I'm fully in still, and I think that he is going to make an impact on this team at some point. Whew. Boy, this is so fun to talk about the potential of this team, man. So fun. Last year, this podcast didn't exist last year, but last year I was just so pissed off all the time. Pissed off all the time and questioning a lot of shit. I never said that Brad Underwood should be fired or any of that shit, but there was a lot of question of like what was going on inside that locker room on Brad Underwood's watch. Seems like he's got the right group of guys this year, and it's early. Illinois just got to continue to do what they can do in terms of control their own destiny, win the games they're supposed to win, and hopefully win more of the close matchups they're going to have. Like I said, they got Fairleigh Dickinson Friday, and hopefully they they take care of business and there's no scare or any of that. I don't want to see a letdown in any form against Fairleigh Dickinson. And because this is an older team, Brad Underwood has emphasized that a lot too, that this is an older team. Because they're an older team, I don't think that we will see that. But, college basketball is college basketball. It gets crazy. But going into conference season, I would just like to see Illinois take care of business against this Fairleigh Dickinson team and do what they're supposed to do. All right. Now, this game against Northwestern is, they played one close game with Northwestern last year and got blown out in Evanston by Northwestern, something that I still haven't forgot. So I look forward to that, going back to Evanston and fixing that. I think they play twice this year. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I see Mac in the chat. He says, bad vibes last year. And it's like, yes, there were nothing but bad vibes last year. It felt like, feels good to be excited about this team this year. So again, they got Fairleigh Dickinson, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State. That's a brutal stretch, man. That's a brutal stretch. Then they got Maryland at home. Luckily, so they got, Fairleigh Dickinson at home. Northwestern comes to Champaign. Then they go to Mackey Arena in West Lafayette, and Michigan State comes to Champaign, and Maryland comes to Champaign. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the next 5 games are at home. 4 of the next 5 games are at home. I said before the Rutgers game, if they can go 3-2, I would be happy. They said hold my beer, and they went 4-1. As we sit here right now, on December 27th, 2023, I am asking Illinois to go 4-1 over this next 5-game stretch. They have shown me enough to make me believe that they can do that. They should beat Fairleigh Dickinson fairly easy. I think that they're going to take care of business against Northwestern at home. Purdue is going to be very tough. That's the one game that I'm just not so sure, and I don't really have a lot of confidence in. Plus, Mackey Arena is one of the hardest places to go to and win. Michigan State at home, they've played well against Michigan State at home in the Brad Underwood era. Also, Michigan State has been, they pounded Baylor, and they've played well since then, right? Maybe they're starting to get it together. I don't know, though. I don't know. Maybe I will be a little bit more afraid come January 11th. Maybe I will. But I don't know. Right now, I feel really good about Illinois going up against Michigan State. And Maryland on the road, it'll be tough because Maryland always plays Illinois tough, it feels like, in recent years. But I'll take Illinois at home. With the way this team is playing going into conference season, I'm doubling down, man. I'm doubling down. I'm riding this roller coaster of going straight to the moon right now. 4-1. That means you start conference season. If they lose to Purdue, you've already won one. You got 1, 2, 3. Start conference season 4-1 because you already beat Rutgers, Northwestern, Michigan State, Maryland. You got 3 days in between each. Well, you play Purdue January 5th, and then you don't play again until January 11th. So you got some decent time off. But then after January 11th, you host Maryland on January 14th. So, some decent, at least 3 days off from all in between all these games. And of course, this is all barring injuries and stuff like that, right? So that's my official ask. Again, when they going into the Rutgers game, I asked for 3-2. They went 4-1 over the next 5 games. This 5-game stretch, I'm asking for a 4-1 record. Beat Fairleigh Dickinson like you're supposed to. Beat Northwestern at home because at this point, yes, Northwestern looks like a scary team. And yes, I've said that I think Northwestern finishes at least in the top 5 of the Big Ten this year. But they also have games where they lose to Chicago State. And also, I just think they're a better home team than they are a road team. Compete against Michigan State and hopefully win. And same thing with Maryland. Purdue's really good. And my thing is how are you going to guard Edey? That when I think about the Purdue game, that's when I'm thinking about Dane Danger. That's what I'm thinking about Dane Danger. It's going to be hard for Coleman Hawkins to guard Zach Edey, man. It just is. But we'll see. We'll see. If they don't get that game against Purdue, they do play in Champaign on March 5th. So I look forward to that game. Okay. We're about 28 minutes in. So I feel like it's time to finally talk about the most talked about thing on Illini Twitter this week. You might guess it. You might know what I'm talking about. Anyone remember Brandon Podziemski? I think everyone here remembers Brandon Podziemski. He was an Illini recruit. He was with the team that won the Big Ten back in, 21-22. Didn't really play meaningful minutes. He was a pretty highly touted recruit. But 3 days ago, he tweeted, 2 years ago at this time, I had 17 DMPs and only played garbage time. 1 year ago at this time, I wasn't on any draft boards. 5 months ago, all I heard was that I was a bust. Started the year out of the rotation, and now I'm starting for the best franchise in the NBA. Hashtag, if I can do it, you can too. So this because of the first part of this tweet, it started a stir on Illini Twitter, and I'm not surprised by it. Let me just say that I was a big believer in this guy. Whenever he came to Illinois, there is an article out there. When I used to write for ontapsportsnet.com, there's an article out there, and I can put it after I'm done with the show. I can put it in the YouTube description. I'll put it in the podcast description if you guys want to check it out. Whatever. All it is was me kind of predicting like his role with Illinois. It talks a lot about what his, his ranking and everything coming out of high school. He was like Mr. Basketball in the state of Wisconsin, I believe. He was someone that I thought was really going to actually play a big role with Illinois. But Illinois was like, they had a lot of guards on that team. They had obviously Trent Frazier, Alfonso Plummer, DeMonte Williams. They had a lot of, they were a deep team. That's why they ended up taking a share for the Big Ten regular season title, right? So, the stir on Illini Twitter was, people making an excuse for Brad Underwood for not playing him and letting him transfer out. And then the other people, looking at it in hindsight and wish that Brad Underwood just would have played him, and they're just blaming Brad Underwood for this entire thing. I won't sit here and say that Brad Underwood doesn't deserve any blame for this. I mean, you had a guy who you barely played, who showed at Santa Clara and has shown in the NBA that he can be an elite shooter. And that team, while they had good shooting nights, they were inconsistent from three, in my opinion, that year. That there were parts of that season that them winning the regular season Big Ten title was kind of like, it was just nice to win that after getting screwed over during the year before because of Michigan and like the technicality or whatever that was. I think that was the year before. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's the whole thing with Kevin Warren and everything. Like, it was just nice to be able to say that you got a share of the Big Ten regular season title. And it was like the first time since like, was it 2005? I can't remember. But it had been a really long time, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is that team was good, but I feel like perhaps if maybe they played him or at least given him more opportunity, maybe he could have made an impact on that team. Maybe they wouldn't have fizzled out in the NCAA tournament the way they did. I will say that Houston team was really good, and even if Podziemski played, I'm not so sure they would have won. Right? But maybe they win the entire Big Ten just themselves. Maybe, just maybe that team is significantly better, right? And DeMonte Williams just really wasn't that great his last year. Like, he was a good glue guy. He defended as well as anyone on the team. Brad Underwood would put him on the best players to defend all the time. There was a reason he was out there, and it was mainly for defense. But his three-point shooting was very much inconsistent that season compared to the season before when Ayo Dosunmu was still here. So that's just my thoughts. I think that I think a lot of Illini Twitter that's making up the excuse for Brad Underwood for not playing him because of all those dudes, older dudes. Like, it's fair. Like, that's just how it is, right? But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, you could have played him more. Yeah, absolutely could have played him more. And if you read that article, again, that I'll put in the description, you can just Google it. All you got to do is search Brandon Podziemski on Tap Sportsnet on Google, and it's like the second link. I said in it that I thought that he was going to have a bigger role with Illinois that year. There was obvious reason for that, and it just didn't happen. So to me, it felt like a missed opportunity. Did it cost them an NCAA tournament appearance? No. Did it cost them perhaps a trip to the Sweet 16? Maybe, just because maybe the team could have been better and maybe they get a higher seed and they don't have to play freaking Houston in the second round. I don't know. I don't know. I will say this. Brandon's dad's a very nice dude. I've DM'd with him before, and I told him, I'm happy to see that your son went on to have success at Santa Clara and is in the NBA having success now, and I told him that Brad Underwood probably beats himself up for letting him go or whatever. And he just told me, what did he tell me? We are just blessed. He is living his dream. So, it is what it is. That's what it is to me. It is what it is. This is not going to be the first. It's not going to be the last time that something like this probably happens. You just hope that it doesn't happen very often. The guy got an opportunity to play more at Santa Clara, and that's why he took it. And he showed out, man. He showed out in a big way. So I'll drink to him. And I'm rooting for him, even though he plays for the Warriors, and I don't want to root for the Warriors. I'm rooting for him. Okay. How should we finish the show? Take a trip around the Big Ten? A trip around the Big Ten as we head into conference season. Right now, Illinois technically sits tied for third place in the Big Ten behind Indiana and Northwestern, which is hilarious that Indiana's in first. They're 2-0 in conference. I believe they beat Maryland and Michigan, but they are such a fraudulent team. I can't wait to watch them suck the rest of the year. I say that and I probably jinxed it. So whenever they're actually good, you can all blame me. Iowa, Michigan State, the very bottom right now, both 0-2 in the Big Ten is what it is. I think Iowa is bad. I look forward to playing Iowa. I said this in the last podcast. Y'all think I hate Mizzou? Just wait till we play Iowa. I have not forgot all the bullshit I had to deal from Iowa fans after the Orange Crush got kicked out of Carver Arena or whatever it was. Something that they do like every year. And then like the audacity of Iowa fans to say that they should all be arrested. Some of the dumbest tweets I have ever read on college basketball Twitter. I have to say it's laugh out loud funny. So yeah, I thought Purdue's win over Arizona was pretty impressive, especially after they lost to Northwestern. They've picked it back up. They look like the team to beat in this conference. Like, I hate to say it, but they are the one team that scares me. They dominated Iowa. Alabama kind of gave them a scare, but they still won by 6. And then they beat Arizona by 8 points. Fly the W says in the chat, Pods didn't show it at Illinois. Stop it. And he was a traffic cone on defense. Well, he didn't get a lot of opportunities. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he should have played over whoever. I'm just saying that it's very clear that he was a very good player. You don't just leave after 1 year, go to Santa Clara, ball out like he did, and then go to the NBA and be a first-round pick. There has to be some sort of fault on Brad Underwood for this. And this is coming from a guy who completely supports Brad Underwood for almost everything. So I'm not saying that things would have been much different, but I do think that maybe, just maybe, if you would have found a way to get him in the rotation more, maybe they would have at least had better shooting, because I felt like that season their shooting was inconsistent. You knew going into the NCAA tournament like the ceiling for that team already. Maybe he could have made a difference. Again, it's all in hindsight, and I don't really care. And you can say whatever you want to say, man. Like, I'm not completely even disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that he was a highly talented prospect coming out of the state of Wisconsin, and they barely played him. They played him, like he said, garbage time minutes, or not at all. Like, how can you tell if this guy was something or not in that kind of role? You know what I mean? So What do you say? Here, I'll show your comment. BU's on the verge of having his third AA under his tutelage at Illinois. Hindsight is always 2020. Absolutely. Again, it is all in hindsight. And at the end of the day, I don't really, it doesn't bother me like I feel like it's bothering a lot of people on Illini Twitter. But, you know, it's just something to think about. Like maybe things could have been a little bit different. I don't think they would have been Final Four different or anything like that, but you know. So anyway, like we're going around the Big Ten here. Purdue's been very impressive. They've beat their non-conference schedule is honestly really impressive. The way that they won. They, Fremantle didn't play is out for the entire year basically for Xavier. So, Purdue beat them by 12. Probably should have won by more, honestly. They beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga's having a down year, but still Gonzaga is Gonzaga. They beat Tennessee, a team that Illinois did not beat. They only won by 4, though. They beat Marquette, another team that Illinois didn't beat, only by 3, though. So close games. They're one. It's hard for me to even call it a bad loss. Like I think Northwestern is good. I think Northwestern is going to finally make an NCAA tournament for consecutive years this year. They basically brought back the same team. So them losing on the road at Northwestern to me isn't a bad loss unless they just completely flame out here in the conference season. They beat up on Iowa. They beat Alabama, and then they beat Arizona. They played a tough conference schedule, in my opinion, and they deserve to be the number 1 team in the country. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that game against Purdue, and I'm trying not to get too far ahead. They have Northwestern next week. Since the game against Chicago State, they beat DePaul 56-46. That had to have been the most disgusting game ever. And then they beat Arizona State by 19. So they've kind of bounced back. They got Jackson State before they come to Illinois. I doubt that they'll have some sort of trap. I doubt it will be any sort of trap. But they look very competitive. So I'm not overlooking them. I think that they're going to be a very tough team in this conference. Wisconsin has kind of been a surprise, at least in my opinion. Like I know that they brought back a bunch of guys from last year's team, but I just feel like they're the same thing every single year. The one thing I'll say something nice about Wisconsin. They're a lot easier to accept with Brad Davison not there. I hated Brad Davison, bro. Hate's a strong word, but man, did he annoy my shit when he was there. He really did. But, in their non-conference, they lost to Tennessee. They lost to Providence, they weren't a ranked team whenever they beat Providence, or Providence wasn't, but they're now ranked. Providence has started off the Big East season pretty well, beating Marquette last week. They beat another team too. It was a close game. I was watching it. I can't remember. But so they lost those 2, but they did beat Virginia by more than 20 points. They beat Michigan State. They beat Marquette in Madison. So yeah, they lost to Arizona. There was no way they were going to compete against Arizona. The way that Arizona plays and just how potent their offense is compared to Wisconsin's. The only way Wisconsin was going to win that game is if they were able to hold Arizona under 70 points, and that did not happen. So they have been an impressive team. They beating Marquette, beating Michigan State, who I think will be better as the year goes on, and beating Virginia, I think, is an impressive win or impressive wins. So I fear right now, Purdue, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Ohio State's kind of came back to relevance, right? I haven't talked a lot about them, and that's probably because I hadn't really believed in them yet. They, what do you call it? They just recently beat UCLA, and I know UCLA is kind of having a down year, but they are one of the best defenses in college basketball. They beat UCLA by 7. They beat Santa Clara, who I think is a really solid mid-major school this year still, even with after losing Podsminski. They beat Alabama, which, again, I know they are having kind of like a rebuild season, not nearly as good as last year's team, but Alabama's played well against some decent teams too. It's a good test. I will say, like, their bad loss for sure, like, losing to Penn State. It was on the road, but losing to Penn State is a bad loss. Like, Penn State's going to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten this year. I think Mike Rhodes has potential to do well there because he did so well at VCU, but I just don't think it's going to happen in year one. So I do think that that's a bad loss. They lost by 3, but based off what we've seen from Penn State, it's probably not going to age well for Ohio State there. But I am intrigued about them. I do think they're better, completely better than last year. Am I scared? No, but I do think when you talk about the best teams in this conference right now, I think you got to put them up there. We could talk about Michigan State, who I think is going to be better. I said earlier, I watched the game that they pounded, like demolished Baylor. They demolished Baylor. And this is coming off a loss against Nebraska, who I also think is better this year. But that's beside the point. Michigan State, with the hype they had coming into the season, for them to lose to Nebraska, that was alarming. But they really bounced back against it. I think Baylor was ranked like number 6 at the time when Michigan State beat them. And they've won their 2 non-conference games since. They beat Oakland and they beat Stony Brook, whatever. They got to play Indiana State on Saturday, and then they host Penn State and Northwestern to start Big Ten play. They obviously has some bad losses. Obviously, their first game of the year against James Madison, a lot of people thought that was a bad loss. They're a ranked team. So it's not aging like a bad loss. They lost to Duke, which isn't necessarily a bad loss, but they play Duke every year. I feel like they have never beat them. They lost by 6 to Arizona. They lost by 13 to Wisconsin, which at the time was kind of like, I feel like Michigan State's better than them. I still do. I still think Michigan State's a better team than them. It won't age like a bad loss, though. And losing to Nebraska by 7, who, I don't know. The Big Ten's down this year, I think, so maybe they can hang around, be something. But yeah, they don't really have a lot of bad losses. It's just like they don't have any good wins either. They had opportunities, right? They could have beat Duke. They could have beat Arizona, but they didn't. So I think they're just going to be like every other Izzo team and is really good later in the year. But they got to start being more consistent and win games. That way they can actually have the opportunity to play in March. So that's where I'm at on this conference. I think, like I said, in Indiana's fraudulent. I don't think that they're for real. They had that game against Kansas and just absolutely choked it away. They almost lost to Morehead State the next game after. They blew out Northern Alabama. Whatever. Who gives a shit? I probably would have thought differently if they would have been able to close out that game against Kansas. But yeah, I don't believe in them at all. Iowa, like I said, stinks. Not high on Michigan. Not necessarily high on Maryland either. Nebraska is interesting, which is more than what they've ever been, it feels like, at least over the last handful of years. Definitely in the Fred Hoiberg era. They're interesting. We'll see. I'm not buying in yet. So I'm just overall, this conference is just very, to me, it's mid this year. It's not like it was even like they weren't good. This conference wasn't very good last year either, but they always somehow, some way get way too many teams in March, and it shows when they're all eliminated before the second weekend. But two years ago, this conference was, in my opinion, the best conference in college basketball. So, but I don't think this conference is that good in terms of like comparing it to that year at all. So this is a year where Illinois, if they can win one of these games against Purdue and play well against the rest of the conference, They have a chance. They have a chance to win this conference regular season. They have a chance. I believe it. I really do. So I'm excited to watch it all play out. So I hope y'all are too. I'm ready to ride it. Like, I'm ready for this game against Northwestern. I wish we didn't have to watch this Fairleigh Dickinson game on Friday, but I will be watching and I will be paying attention. So been doing this for about 50 minutes. I didn't think I'd be sitting here for almost an hour. I appreciate the handful of people who have been hanging out, watching. Please hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube. It would mean a lot. Hit the subscribe button. I just went over 200 subscribers on YouTube. It was a long journey, but we made it, guys. I'm hoping to do a lot. I'm hoping to really grow my YouTube channel in 2024. That's kind of a goal of mine. So I appreciate everyone's support. And again, I'm always here to listen to people's thoughts and opinions related to whatever. I don't necessarily agree with Fly the Dub, his comments earlier, but it's fine. It's not that I don't have to be right. That's totally fine. So again, I appreciate y'all for hanging out. Go subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening somehow, some way on Spotify, thank you for subscribing. Share it with your friends, all that good stuff. Means a lot. This conference season is going to really heat up. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch this Illinois team. So if your friends are looking for an Illinois podcast, or if you think they're looking for an Illinois podcast, please share it with them. It would mean so much to me. So yeah, I'll end that spiel. Make sure you're following me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where I'm putting specifically on Twitter and TikTok, I'm putting a lot more Illinois content on there than I am on Instagram. That's for sure. Cody_CHGO. We'll be doing, again, a lot more Illini content here in January and February and March, obviously. So I'm looking forward to doing it. So I will talk to y'all Friday, maybe, might be Saturday. I got plans Friday night, and it's not it's Fairleigh Dickinson. More likely than not, we'll be doing a podcast on Saturday. So forgive me for not doing a live stream against Fairleigh Dickinson. But yeah, I'll talk to y'all soon. Again, I appreciate y'all. And as I always say when I end this, ILL.